I realized something was terribly wrong the moment his last message appeared on my screen. It was short, cold, and nothing like the man I thought I knew. My hands were shaking as I read it again, trying to understand how everything had unraveled so fast. If I had closed the app that night, if I had ignored that first message weeks earlier, none of this would have happened. But I didn't. And now, there was no way back. It started so innocently that it almost feels cruel to remember. Late nights, endless scrolling, the quiet loneliness that creeps in when life feels stalled. I wasn't looking for anything serious, not even looking for love. I just wanted conversation, distraction, a human voice on the other side of the screen. Then his profile appeared. Not flashy, not overly polished. Just a photo with a calm smile and eyes that seemed to hold something unsaid. I hesitated before replying, unaware that this small decision would pull me into a dark past I was never meant to touch. Our conversations flowed easily from the beginning. He had a way of asking questions that made me feel seen, as if he was genuinely curious about my thoughts, not just filling silence. He listened. Or at least, that's what it felt like. We talked about trivial things at first, daily routines, favorite movies, memories from childhood. But slowly, almost without noticing, the conversations deepened. He shared fragments of his life, never too much at once, always stopping just before it felt complete. That mystery kept me hooked. There was something fragile about him. He joked, but beneath it I sensed sadness, maybe regret. I found myself wanting to understand him, to be the person he could finally open up to. And maybe, without admitting it, I wanted the same for myself. I didn't realize that this desire was already pulling me into a forbidden relationship, one that crossed invisible lines I hadn't even seen yet. One night, he asked me a question that felt heavier than the others. He wanted to know about my family. Not the surface-level details, but the complicated parts. The arguments, the silences, the things no one likes to admit. I hesitated, but I answered. As I typed, I felt exposed, as if I was handing over pieces of myself I usually keep locked away. He responded with understanding, with words that felt almost too perfectly chosen. That was the moment trust settled in. After that, he started sharing more. Or so I thought. He talked about growing up feeling invisible, about a home filled with tension and secrets. He never named them directly, just hinted at a hidden truth that had shaped him. Each time I tried to ask for clarity, he would redirect, promising that one day he'd tell me everything. That promise became a quiet thread pulling me forward. Weeks passed, and our connection intensified. We messaged from morning until late into the night. I started rearranging my day around those conversations, waiting for the vibration of my phone. It felt irrational, but also irresistible. Somewhere along the way, the line between curiosity and emotional dependence blurred. I knew it was dangerous, but I told myself it was harmless. After all, it was just words on a screen. That lie would haunt me later. There were moments that felt almost intimate, despite the distance. Late-night confessions, shared fears, unspoken desires hovering between lines of text. He never crossed certain boundaries explicitly, yet everything about the way he spoke suggested more. It was subtle, calculated, and it worked. I felt chosen, special, as if out of all the people in the world, he had picked me to see the real him. But cracks started to appear. Small inconsistencies at first. Details that didn't align. A story he told one week that sounded slightly different the next. When I gently questioned him, he brushed it off with humor, calling himself forgetful. I laughed along, ignoring the knot forming in my stomach. I didn't want to believe there was betrayal hidden beneath his charm. One evening, he disappeared for hours without warning. No replies, no explanation. I told myself not to overreact, but anxiety crawled under my skin. When he finally responded, his tone was distant. He said something vague about family issues, about needing space. I respected it outwardly, but inside, fear took root. I realized how deeply attached I had become. That night, I couldn't sleep. Questions spiraled through my mind. Who was he really when he wasn't talking to me? What parts of his life was he keeping hidden? And why did I feel like I was standing at the edge of something dangerous, unable to turn back? The next few days were strange. He oscillated between warmth and coldness, intimacy and withdrawal. It felt like emotional whiplash. When he was present, he was attentive, almost intense. When he pulled away, the silence was suffocating. I started blaming myself, wondering if I had said something wrong, if I was asking for too much. That self-doubt kept me trapped. Then came the message that changed everything. He asked if we could talk about something important. My heart raced as I read it. There was a seriousness in his words that made my chest tighten. I agreed, bracing myself for whatever he was about to reveal. Part of me hoped this was the moment he would finally tell me his hidden truth. He started by apologizing. Not for anything specific, just a general apology that felt heavy with implication. He said there were things about his life he hadn't been honest about. As I read, my mind filled with possibilities, each one darker than the last. I told him I could handle it, that honesty was all I wanted. I meant it at the time. What he confessed wasn't what I expected. It wasn't a single shocking detail, but a series of revelations that slowly twisted my perception of everything we had shared. He admitted that some of his stories were incomplete, carefully edited versions of reality. He said he had done it to protect himself, to avoid judgment. I tried to be understanding, even as unease settled deeper. Then he mentioned someone from his family. Just briefly, almost casually. A connection, a relationship that felt uncomfortably close to things I had shared about my own past. My stomach dropped. I asked him to explain, my fingers trembling over the keyboard. He hesitated, and in that pause, fear bloomed. As his responses came in, fragmented and cautious, a disturbing pattern emerged. The timelines, the places, the details. They overlapped with my own life in ways that felt impossible to ignore. I told myself it was coincidence, but my mind kept racing ahead, connecting dots I wasn't ready to face. The idea forming was unthinkable, and yet it refused to leave. I confronted him gently, then more directly. I asked questions he couldn't easily deflect. With each answer, the tension grew. His messages became shorter, defensive. He accused me of reading too much into things, of letting my imagination run wild. But the fear in his words betrayed him. I could feel it through the screen. That was when I decided to look for answers on my own. It felt wrong, invasive, but I couldn't ignore the sense of impending shock. I searched details he had shared casually, names, places, small clues I had previously dismissed. What I found made my breath catch. Pieces of information lined up with a precision that felt deliberate. I stared at my screen, heart pounding, as the hidden truth began to surface. This wasn't just an online connection gone wrong. This was something far more tangled, rooted in family secrets and a dark past neither of us had fully acknowledged. The realization left me feeling exposed, betrayed, and terrified of what would come next. When I confronted him with what I had discovered, there was a long silence. Minutes stretched into an eternity. I watched the screen, waiting for the typing indicator to appear, dreading and craving it at the same time. When his reply finally came, it was nothing like I expected. He didn't deny it. That single moment shifted everything. The person I thought I knew dissolved, replaced by someone capable of manipulation, of weaving a connection built on half-truths. My chest ached as I realized how deeply I had been pulled into his story, how willingly I had ignored the warning signs. And yet, even then, part of me wanted to understand him, to hear the full story. That internal conflict tore me apart. I knew I was standing on dangerous ground, entangled in a betrayal that went beyond romance or friendship. This was about identity, about boundaries shattered in ways that couldn't be undone. As the conversation continued, his words revealed a desperation I hadn't seen before. He spoke about loneliness, about feeling trapped by circumstances he didn't choose. He admitted he had crossed lines, that he knew what we were doing was wrong. Hearing that confirmed what my instincts had been screaming all along. I closed the app that night with my heart in pieces, knowing this was far from over. The shock hadn't fully landed yet. I was only beginning to grasp the depth of what I had uncovered, and the consequences that would follow. The truth was still unfolding, and it promised to be more devastating than anything I had imagined. I thought closing the app would protect me, but the silence only made everything louder. His words echoed in my head, mixing with my own memories, my own doubts. I told myself I was done, that I wouldn't open the messages again. But curiosity and fear have a strange way of feeding each other, and before sunrise, my phone vibrated. It was him. He said he hadn't slept. He said neither had I, as if he could see through the darkness of my room. That alone sent a chill through me. He didn't apologize again. Instead, he asked if I wanted the full truth. Not the edited version. Not the careful fragments. Everything. I stared at the screen for a long time, knowing that once I said yes, there would be no way to unlearn what I was about to hear. I agreed. What followed was slow, deliberate, almost cruel in its pacing. He didn't dump the truth all at once. He revealed it piece by piece, like someone carefully removing bandages from an old wound, knowing it would hurt more that way. He explained how our paths had crossed online by chance, or at least that's what he claimed at first. But then he admitted he had recognized something familiar in my story long before I did in his. That was the moment my stomach turned. He had known more about me than he let on. Not everything, but enough. Enough to shape his words, to mirror my emotions, to become exactly what I needed to hear. He insisted it wasn't malicious at first. He said it felt comforting, like finding a piece of himself reflected in a stranger. But comfort slowly turned into obsession, and obsession into something darker. He confessed that his family history was tangled with secrets he had spent his whole life trying to escape. Hidden relationships, silenced scandals, betrayals buried under years of denial. As he described it, I felt an uncomfortable familiarity, as if he was narrating a version of my own family's past. That parallel wasn't accidental. Our lives were connected by a truth no one had ever fully acknowledged. When he finally said it plainly, my chest tightened so hard I could barely breathe. We weren't just strangers who met online. Our families were linked by a forbidden relationship decades ago, one that had fractured lives and rewritten identities. The possibility that our connection echoed that same pattern felt unbearable. It was as if history was repeating itself through us, pulling us into a cycle we never chose. I accused him of manipulating me, of turning my vulnerability into his playground. He didn't deny it. Instead, he said something that still haunts me. He said he wanted to see if the story could end differently this time. As if we were characters in some twisted experiment, meant to test whether bloodlines and secrets truly define us. Anger surged through me, sharp and uncontrollable. I told him he had stolen my agency, that he had crossed boundaries no one has the right to cross. He listened, absorbing every word, and when I finished, he said quietly that he knew. He said that was why he hated himself for it. Despite everything, I couldn't bring myself to block him immediately. That realization scared me more than his confession. Part of me was still tangled in the emotional bond we had built, however false its foundation was. That's the cruelest part of betrayal. Even when you see it clearly, it doesn't instantly erase what you felt. Over the next days, our conversations became heavier, more raw. There was no flirtation left, no illusion of innocence. Only two people standing in the wreckage of something that should never have existed. He told me about the shame he carried, about growing up under whispers and half-truths. I shared how this revelation cracked open wounds I thought had healed long ago. Each message felt like reopening a scar. At one point, he suggested meeting in person. The suggestion hit me like a slap. I realized then how far this had gone, how blurred the lines had become in his mind. I refused immediately, fear flooding every part of me. The idea of seeing his face, of hearing his voice, felt too real, too dangerous. He accepted my refusal, but the disappointment in his response was unmistakable. That night, I finally understood the full weight of the situation. This wasn't just an online mistake or a shocking discovery. It was a collision of past and present, of unresolved family secrets bleeding into my life. I felt contaminated by a history I never asked to inherit. I decided to step away. I told him I needed distance, time to process everything without his influence. He said he understood, but his final messages were filled with longing and regret. He warned me that once I walked away, the truth would still be there, waiting. He was right about that. The days that followed were some of the hardest of my life. Without the constant messages, I was left alone with my thoughts. I replayed every conversation, every moment of connection, searching for signs I should have noticed sooner. The betrayal hurt, but what hurt more was realizing how easily I had been pulled into it. I began looking at my family differently. Old stories took on new meaning. Silences felt louder. I saw how secrets ripple through generations, shaping choices, desires, and fears. The shocking discovery I made online forced me to confront a reality that had been hiding in plain sight all along. Eventually, he sent one last message. He said he was leaving the platform, trying to disappear from the life he had built on fragments and lies. He didn't ask for forgiveness. He said he didn't deserve it. He only hoped that telling the truth, however late, might stop the cycle from continuing. I never replied. Letting go didn't bring immediate relief. Some nights, I still wondered what parts of him were real, and what was carefully constructed. I questioned my own judgment, my need for connection, my vulnerability. But slowly, clarity replaced confusion. I understood that empathy doesn't require self-destruction, and curiosity doesn't justify crossing moral lines. What stays with me now isn't just the pain, but the awareness. I learned how easily loneliness can open the door to a hidden truth you're not prepared to face. I learned that family secrets don't stay buried forever, they find new ways to surface, often through the people least expecting them. I share this story because I know I'm not the only one. Many of us seek comfort online, believing distance equals safety. But screens don't erase intentions, and words can still wound deeply. If you've ever felt pulled into something that didn't feel right but was impossible to walk away from, you're not alone. If this story made you think, if it stirred something uncomfortable or familiar, stay here. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss stories like this, stories about hidden truths, betrayal, and the dark corners of human connection. Like the video if you believe these conversations matter. And if you feel safe, leave a comment. Sometimes, breaking the silence is the first step to ending the cycle.